Okay, I think I'm not sure if I'm just supposed to start, but the people are starting to post some questions, so I'm going to start. So I'm going to start with an introduction. My name is Dara, and I'm a reproductive counselor. I'm a social worker and a psychotherapist, and I have a small group practice based in Toronto that is entirely in the area of fertility and assisted reproduction. And so all of us that work at Informed Fertility specialize in fertility and reproduction. I was also a patient for many, many years myself. I went through many years of infertility. I had one very early loss. Mostly I wasn't getting pregnant. And eventually, after many rounds of IVF, I moved to surrogacy, and I have two daughters who are carried by surrogates. So that's a little bit about me. So you know who's talking to you today. And I'm really pleased to be here and want to thank Trio for putting this together and hosting this. I know this time of year is incredibly difficult for so many people. And so it's a really good opportunity to answer some questions and see if I can offer some ideas and strategies to help make this time of year a bit more tolerable when you're struggling so much with something that means so much to you. So we've got a few questions that are popping up. The first one is if there's any advice for handling unexpected emotional moments at holiday gatherings. It's a really good question. It's, I think, the big main question this time of year. One of the things that I would say is, as much as possible, to have things not be unexpected. So oftentimes when people are anticipating going to an event, part of what they're thinking is that question, right? Like, what if? What if somebody asks me if I'm pregnant, or asks me when we're having kids, or asks me if I have children, or asks me if I only have one child, that kind of thing. And so getting into the mindset that you are going to be asked those questions, thinking really carefully about who is going to be at the events that you're going to. And when you think about who's going to be there, that can help guide the kind of questions that you can anticipate. So if you're going to be seeing just close family who know what's going on in your life and know what you've been struggling with, then you might get questions about where you are in your journey, as opposed to if you're at an event with extended family that you don't see often, or you're going to a workplace business party where people don't know you, and the small talk will include questions about family. And so thinking about it in advance and knowing that you're going to be getting those questions helps make things be not unexpected. So that can sometimes take the initial blow off because you're not blindsided by a question. You're able to know that those questions are going to come. I think it's really important to be able to have strategies in place at the event to be able to separate yourself and to be able to have conversations change. So, for example, if somebody is asking you questions that do bring up those kinds of things, when somebody is asking you those questions, to be able to have strategies for leaving so you can manage your emotions. So that could be leaving altogether, which sometimes you can start by, when you show up, letting people know that you have a headache, you're not feeling fantastic, you may not be able to stay the whole time. It could mean finding a way to get out of that space. Maybe there's something that you can do in the kitchen, right? Like maybe you can go and clear some dishes, or you can go into the kitchen and help prepare something. If people have a dog, that's always fantastic. Dogs need walks, saying that you're going to take the dog and go for a walk. It can be really important to have an ally with you. So if you have a partner, that could be your partner. If you have somebody who's at the event who knows what's going on, who can help redirect a conversation, who can sort of catch your hand and give it a squeeze so you know that you're not alone. So a big part of my advice around these kinds of moments is being really intentional beforehand about what you're going to expect and how you can maneuver and navigate in that moment. And I also think it's important to have a plan for afterwards. So going to these things, you already know it's going to be hard in different kinds of ways. So what's the plan for after? You know, is it possible, for example, to have a funny movie picked out? Or if you like baths, to buy some really nice bath oils or bath salts. So you know that you're going to this event that's going to be difficult, and then you're coming home and you're going to have a really beautiful bath. You know, a treat, having some ice cream at home. So you're watching a movie that you've already picked out. You've got that ice cream, like something that you know you're going to be going from this event that's causing you some pain to something that is comforting to you, that is going to help you recover from what was difficult. I also think it's really, really important that you are very intentional about the things that you go to. There are so many events this time of year, And a lot of people feel like they have to go to all of them. And I really would encourage everybody who's listening today to really think about what have to means. Do you have to because it's a business event and it's potentially bad for your career to not go? Do you have to because if you don't go, some family members will be upset, their feelings will be hurt? Sometimes there are really, truly reasons why you need to go to something, but sometimes you don't actually have to. It feels like you do, but the pain it will cause you is not equal to the upset somebody else might have at you not being there. That you not being there may not ruin the event for other people. They'll just miss you a bit. So I would definitely encourage you to think about what events are worth the pain they're going to cause you and what events are okay to skip. If you have a partner, maybe some events your partner can go to, but not you. And again, maybe some of them you can go late or leave early and not be there for the whole time. And that can also help in terms of those boundaries and managing some of the distress that will be coming up at some of these events for you. Another question we had is, what are some ways to communicate needs and feelings to family members and close friends? So this can be tricky because while it can go well when you communicate your needs, it can also feel really overwhelming and very distressing when people don't respond in the way that they want, the way that you want. Again, I'm going to go back to the language I used in the first question around intentionality. It sounds kind of, I don't know, old school, but I think it can be really helpful to make a list of the people in your life that you would consider communicating with, that you would consider sharing with. And really like showing my age thing on a piece of paper or on your phone, like literally write down those people's names and decide what kind of information you would want to share with them. You know, there's people that you want to share a huge amount with. There's people that you want to share just a little bit about, people that you know will be very responsive, people that you're not sure about, and you can sort of categorize people. And then you can decide, does it make sense to send out an email in advance to people in your family to say, you know, just a reminder, I'm really looking forward to seeing everybody at the holidays. I also wanted to let you know that this can be a complicated time for me. And so if I step away from the table or if I leave early, like, please don't take offense. I'm just trying to catch my breath so I can be with you as much as possible. You can ask somebody in your family, if you have a family member, a close friend who has been a good ally for you, you can let them know what you need and ask them to pass the word along to other people. So knowing in advance, do you think that people would respond, the people that you're communicating with, are they going to respond better if you speak to them versus a text or versus, you know, a phone call versus in person? Like, what makes the most sense? And try to be really clear with proactive things people can do instead of just things they can't do. So, for example, if you don't want somebody to ask you what's happening with your treatment, if people in your life know that you're going through IVF, for example, or you're looking for an egg donor or a sperm donor or a surrogate, and they know that, but you don't want them to ask you what the status is, then instead of just saying, you know, I don't want to get into it over the holidays, please don't ask me any questions about that, then maybe give them something that they could ask you. You know, like, you know, I'm really happy to talk about my job, or I'm really happy to talk about whatever. I'm just trying not to talk about this. Language can also be helpful in terms of how you want them to talk to you. So, you know, creating a space where you can say to people, I don't always want to talk about how I'm feeling, but sometimes I do. So it's helpful if you ask me if I want to talk about something instead of just asking me how I'm feeling. So thinking about, you know, what those needs and feelings are and what it is that you need from specific people. Sometimes really what we want is just love and a hug and being able to say to people, you know, I'm feeling a lot of things about what's going on right now. It's hard to talk about. Sometimes I do want to share, and the really thing that is the most helpful to me is when I share something and you just tell me that you love me and give me a hug. That is the most helpful. So you're expressing what you need, and you're also expressing the way in which they can help you. Because oftentimes what ends up happening is we just tell people what we don't want them to do. And so then they're often left not knowing how to navigate a situation when they love you and they want to support you. So having a balance in that way can be really helpful. Um, Question here, mindfulness or relaxation techniques that can be helpful during this time. So there's so many of them. I mean, I would say an oldie but a goodie is remembering to breathe. And so for any of you who are listening right now, I would encourage you to practice doing deep belly breaths. And so one of the things I will often say to people is when you take a deep breath in, where do you feel that? And oftentimes people who aren't used to doing like really deep breathing, where they feel it is like right here, like in their chest. When they breathe in, they feel it here. And so you can practice doing this beforehand. Put your hand on your belly, your lower belly. And when you take a breath, I want you to imagine the breath going from your mouth all the way down your body to your belly and your belly pushing out. So think about your belly like a balloon. So your breath should push that out. So you breathe in. And when you do that, your belly expands. And then you breathe out and your belly contracts. So deep breathing, it's cliche, but it's a cliche because it works. And you take your breath everywhere you go. And that can do a lot to helping to settle your nerves. There's an entire science behind why those deep breaths do help in terms of settling us. So one is remembering to breathe. With the deep breaths, there are some other exercises that you can do. There's one that's a favorite of mine. I'm happy to share it. It includes a breath, an affirmation, and a hand movement. So I just did the breath with you. The hand movement looks like this. So you're doing finger to thumb, finger to thumb, finger to thumb, and finger to thumb. So these are pressure points. And when you press, there is a physical response in there. And then with the breath and with this, you're also saying an affirmation. And so the affirmation could be any forward affirmation. It could be this too shall pass. What else can it be? I will be okay. So basically what you're doing is you're taking a breath. So breath in, breath out, breath in, breath out. And then as you're doing that, you're saying your statement in your mind. And so that kind of thing can be really helpful, especially if you're practicing it in advance, because then when you're at an event that's causing you some distress, you can be doing this with your hand in your lap or under a table or by your side, and nobody will even notice that you're doing it. And so you could be taking those deep breaths and saying that forward statement that is going to help you feel a little bit calmer, manage your distress, and pressing in these pressure points. And those three things combined can help absolutely in terms of putting you in a mindset of being able to get through whatever that moment is that's causing you so much distress. A lot of this stuff is about distress tolerance. There's not a lot to change the outside environment. The things that are the distress that's coming at you can't be changed, but being able to find strategies to manage how you get through that, how you tolerate that. And so that finger thumb movement, affirmation and breath can be really helpful. Okay, we have another one. I want to be around kids and talk about trying, but my partner doesn't. I'm not sure how to handle it. Yeah. It's incredibly difficult going through this when people have different perspectives. It's hard going through this on your own as a single person, and it's complicated going through this with a partner when people aren't on the same page. I mean, one way I would say to answer it is that you don't have to go to everything together. Or you can identify, or maybe you can identify which part of events are the most painful for your partner. So as an example, one of the things that people tell me often is incredibly painful is being at large family gatherings when children are opening Christmas presents. So let's say like Christmas morning. And I know a lot of people have that tradition where everybody goes to like the grandparents' house or one of the siblings, and everybody who has kids, everybody is there together. The kids all open the presents and then they spend Christmas Day together. And so if that's one of the situations that happens in your family, I wonder if maybe one of the possibilities is that the partner who is not able to really tolerate the distress of being around kids comes late. Like they're just not there for the part where Christmas presents are being opened, but are there for the rest of the event with the children. So being able to look at which part of your family events are really child focused. And that could be with anything, not only around these holidays, a birthday party for children. Maybe that's something where the partner who doesn't feel comfortable skips it altogether or comes at the tail end of it. So being able to identify what's going to happen at the event and see if there's a time that feels more comfortable to come, making really painful decisions about whether or not you need to go to everything together. And in terms of talking about trying, I would say that depends on whether the issue is around privacy. Your partner doesn't want other people to know, or they just don't want to talk about it themselves. They don't want to talk about it. If it's about privacy, then I would really encourage you to speak with your partner and see if you can identify a few people that are in your circle of loved ones as opposed to their circle that you can confide in. Um, I, I feel strongly that one person's need for privacy doesn't supersede another person's need for support, and one person's need for support doesn't supersede another person's need for privacy. There has to be a balance there. And so sometimes that balance is, okay, I'm not going to talk about this with any of our mutual friends, but I do have this one friend that's only sort of like not really connected to my partner. They're more my friend. And so I will talk to them. So really being able to identify who are the people in your life that you both can have a bit of buy-in with you talking about it. So you get the support that you need and your partner feels that they have that privacy on their end maintained. And if it isn't about privacy, but it's just about they don't feel like they can handle discussions about it, then it's finding ways for you to have those discussions without your partner there so that you have the ability to share what you want to share with people, making sure the people that you're sharing with know that your partner does not want to talk about it, so that it's not that it's a secret that you've told them, but you don't want them going back and making a comment to your partner because your partner is not comfortable having those conversations. So setting up those boundaries from the beginning with the people that you talk to. Okay, here's another question. What are some good responses we can say when people ask why we're not drinking? I'm going through a round of IVF and finding it really difficult to navigate this question while making it clear I'm not pregnant. It never ceases to amaze me how people think other people's business is their business. And I wish that some of these things weren't the case, but I know that they are. And it's especially strange because there's actually so many reasons why people aren't drinking. Okay, so I think I don't imagine that I'm going to say things that maybe you personally haven't thought of, but I would say the range of things could be things from I have to wake up early tomorrow morning. I was at a party last weekend and I overdid it, or I have another party tomorrow night, and so I'm trying to pace myself. Um, those kinds of things can be really helpful. If you're talking to different people at a party, instead of it being you're not drinking, it's just, oh, I just finished a drink. Depending on the environment that you're in, there's lots of things that you can have that look like drinks but aren't, right? So soda water and lime could look like a gin and tonic. So sometimes people just find it helpful to have a glass and kind of pretend that they're drinking. If you have a partner who is able to drink and you've decided that you're not drinking, but they are, then you could sort of be doing switch offs where like they're taking the drink from you. So even if somebody pours you a glass of wine, you kind of pretend to take a sip, and then in a little bit, like your partner switches the glass kind of thing. So doing some tricks like that. But if the issue is that you're wanting to come up with a reason that you're not wanting to sort of do those switching drinks maneuvers or drinking drinks that aren't alcoholic that might look alcoholic, which by the way, you can also ask whatever event you're at, if it's at if there's a bar at the event, like if it's a holiday, like a business holiday party, or you're actually at a restaurant or a bar, lots of them have non-alcoholic wines, mocktails, and non-alcoholic beer. And so that will look the same as a drink. And you can always ask the server about that, sort of like going to the bathroom, but on the way to the bathroom, stop and ask the server and make it clear that like you want virgin drinks coming to you. And I would say those things that I suggested around sort of having other excuses around it, right? Like what you did last night, what you're doing tomorrow night, this general season, that you're trying to cut back as opposed to not drinking at all. You're on a health kick, and you're trying to reduce all kinds of things this time of year because, some years you overdo it. So that kind of thing. And switching the topic, right? Remember, think about a question like an invitation. You don't have to accept it. So if somebody asks you why you're not drinking, you could say, "Oh, I really overdid it last night. I'm taking it easy tonight," or "I've got another party tomorrow night. I have to pace myself." You could also just totally ignore the question, right? If somebody says, why aren't you drinking? You could say, "This party is so great. It's so nice to be seeing so many people that I haven't seen for such a long time. Like, what's going on with you?" You actually don't have to answer a question if you don't want to. And sometimes distracting a person will kind of get that you're not answering the question. So sometimes that can work. Okay, somebody is posting, "I had a miscarriage in August." Oh, I'm so sorry. That's so heartbreaking. And I'm so sorry that was your experience. This is the first time I'm seeing everyone in person. I don't know if I should bring it up. So that's really hard. I would say it's hard for me to have advice on this when I don't know the circumstances. So I would say if people don't know that you were pregnant, and they're not expecting that, you may or may not want to share it then. If there are people who knew that you were pregnant and you're going to be seeing them and they do not know that you had a loss, then I think actually it could absolutely benefit you to tell them in advance so that people aren't seeing you and then they are surprised that you're not pregnant. Sending them a message beforehand, letting them know that you had a loss and that you are not wanting to talk about it maybe, but you wanted to let them know what was going on. If there's people that are going to be there who don't know about it, but actually they're people that you care about and you feel like you want them to know what's going on with you, then a way of letting people know news without going into a lot of detail about it is actually about saying a statement without a lot of without a lot of emotion, without a lot of intensity to it, and then switching the topic. So, for example, if you're talking to somebody who you really care about and you want them, they want to know what's happening and you want to tell them, being able to say something to the effect of, "Actually, we did have a loss in August and I'm doing as well as can be, and I'm really happy to be here with everybody today. Don't really want to talk about it, but I'd love to hear what's going on with you." So that way you're giving them the information. You're doing your best not to be very emotive in terms of the feelings about it. And then you're switching topics. So you're letting them know that you don't want to talk about it and you're just kind of moving on from what you've said. So those can be really helpful ways of making sure people around you know what's happening, but not having everything focus on it. I think with this, the big thing to remember is you have a right to be authentic. And it is not required that you put other people's comfort in front of your own. So what I mean by that is that sometimes people do want to share things. They want to tell people they're doing IVF. They want to tell people that they had a miscarriage. They want to tell people that they had a surrogate fall through or like whatever those things are. They want to share it, but they're worried that if they share it, it's going to make other people feel uncomfortable. It's going to make other people feel upset for them or yeah, uncomfortable is the best word I can think of to describe it. And so I just think it's really important for all of you who are struggling that you know that you have a right to put your well-being as a priority for yourself while you're going through this incredibly difficult time. And if it feels disingenuous for you to just pretend you're fine and everything is okay, you're not required to. It is okay to let people know that you're struggling if you want to share. And if the fact that you've just had a miscarriage or for somebody else, they had an IVF cycle that was unsuccessful, if that information makes other people uncomfortable, then they shouldn't ask you how you are, right? They asked you how you are. And if you want to share that, that's okay. And so being able to practice a little bit in advance where you can practice sharing that information and then switching subjects can help you be authentic in that moment if you want to share how you're feeling. Without then making it uncomfortable for you if they start going on and on and on about how sorry they are. So that can be a bit of a balance. And just knowing that you have a right to prioritize your own authentic self and what feels right for you. Just like if you're a person who's very sort of much more comfortable saying no, I'm not going to talk about that. I don't want anybody to know. Then whatever answer you give is also okay, right? So it comes down to what feels right for you and your heart in terms of what you want to share. Okay, somebody's saying it's hard being around my nieces and nephews right now. Yeah, I get that. I hate feeling that way because I love them. How do I show up for them without feeling guilt or jealousy? Yeah. Yeah. This is one of the most common emotions when people are struggling to conceive, and I would really like to normalize it. I don't think that there's anything wrong with feeling this way. When people around us that we love have children, it's hard for us because not only is it a reminder of what we don't have, often we see our parents interacting with our brother and sister's children, which is painful. And the more people around us that have children, the less those people are able to understand our experience and the more out of place we feel with them. Those things are true things. That is not the same thing as wishing harm. So having those feelings of jealousy, that doesn't make you a bad person. It doesn't make you a selfish person. It just makes you a person. Like jealousy is a completely normal emotion, just like any other emotion. And so I would say one of the things to do is to try for yourself to normalize that feeling, to try and lessen and reduce the guilt you feel at having it, because two things can be true at the same time. You can love your niece and nephew, and it can cause you pain to see them. It's not but, it's both things, like you're holding both things as truths. Um, Part of it can be making a conscious decision about who in your life is worth the cost of the pain. So knowing that you see your niece and nephew and it causes you pain, maybe being able to say to yourself, it is going to cause me pain to spend time with them. And that pain is worth it because I love them and I want to stay connected to them. As opposed to maybe you have somebody else in your life who has kids, and actually the kind of pain it would cause you to spend time with those kids isn't worth it to you because that person is not close to you, or those kids are actually super annoying, or whatever it is. And you're like, actually, no, the cost of the pain that it will cause me is not worth the cost of that, that I would actually rather not spend time with those people. But with a niece and nephew, it could be different. So I would say normalizing those feelings. Almost every single person I speak to who's struggling feels the same way you do. I felt that way about my friends' children, my siblings' children. It was near impossible for me to be around them for many years. And that is something that is a pretty common thing when people are going through this. So limit your time if you need to. Be intentional about the time that you spend with them. And decide for yourself if there are times with them that are more difficult than others. So just as like a little, I don't know if this is helpful to say, but I found it much easier or much less painful to be around the children of my loved ones when it was just me and them. I found it not possible. I could not tolerate watching, for example, my parents interact with my siblings' children. That was too painful for me, but I could tolerate the pain of it being just like me with my nieces and nephews and a sibling. And the same thing with friends. I could be with like one friend and their child, some friends, but I couldn't be with like a group of friends and their children. So I would also say, maybe there's a situation or a circumstance where spending time with your nieces and nephews are more painful than other times. And thinking about that in advance and being intentional about how and when you spend time with them can also be helpful. So that way you are acknowledging the pain and the jealousy that it's causing you, and also leaving space to say, okay, I'm going to accept that pain because these are people I want in my life. And I'm only going to accept it in these circumstances, in these ways. And hopefully that helps a little bit. Okay, somebody posted, sometimes I see my partner playing with kids at family events and it hurts because I want that for us. How do I handle the emotional reaction in the moment? Yeah. Yeah, that's really hard. There's a fill in the blank statement that can be really helpful. It's actually useful for a lot of the questions that have been asked. It's a sort of fill in the blank, and it goes, I feel, or I feel like, because, and then I remember that. So in those moments, being able to take that deep belly breath that we talked about and say something like, I feel heartbroken watching my partner play with kids because I know he's going to be or she's going to be such a good parent. And it causes me so much pain to know that we don't have that right now. And then I remember that what I'm seeing in front of me is exactly why I want to have kids with this person, and knowing that we're working hard and we're doing everything we can. So basically, the idea of the statement is validating your feelings. I feel or I feel like because, and then I remember that, right? Then I remember that this is more proof that they're going to be a good parent, that this is why I fell in love with them, that this is why we're putting ourselves through so much to be able to have kids one day, right? That you're sort of finding a way to balance that pain with that statement. And again, like, give yourself grace to leave the room, give yourself grace to go out for a walk. It can be incredibly painful to witness those things, and seeing if there are ways where if it's causing you that much pain, you don't have to, that you can step away if you need to. Somebody said, I used to love the holidays, but infertility has changed that for me. Yeah, I hear that. How do I create new holiday traditions that feel good for me? Great question. I think, earlier in this Q&A, I use the expression distress tolerance, and I think it's really important that that's what we're talking about here. When people are going through infertility, when people are going through reproductive loss, feeling good is relative, because everywhere you go, your infertility, your loss, like that is part of you at this stage. It goes with you. So the idea is, what can you do to make things less terrible? I think if somebody has a goal of like just being happy or making things good, then it's possible that you will be disappointed by what the outcomes are, because whatever you're doing, there's still pain there. So thinking about it more as like a bit of a harm reduction strategy, like what can I do to make things less terrible for me? So I'll give you an example. When I was going through infertility, there got to be a point where I could no longer attend family holiday gatherings. It was too painful for me. And so I would do things with my partner. We would go on trips instead, or if it was, we would go camping, or we would just stay home ourselves and order pizza and like rent movies or whatever it was. And I was still sad. I just wasn't as sad as I would have been if I went to those events. So it was really about managing that distress, saying, okay, I'm going to be sad. I'm going to be sad because I'm going through this. I'm going to be sad because actually I love my family and I want to be at holiday dinners with them. That it's terrible and unfair that I feel like it's too painful for me to attend those things. And I know that the level of pain I would feel at going to those things is much worse than the level of pain I would feel at missing those things. So for you, really thinking about that distress tolerance and that kind of harm reduction strategy to say, those things are too painful for me. These things feel less painful. And so what would that look like? And that would be if you're on your own or if you have a partner, what are things that when you do them, the pain that you're feeling is not front of mind? So that whether it's exercise or going out to movies or taking a day trip or going somewhere overnight, that you're doing something that feels in that moment, the language you use, good for you, meaning not as painful as doing something else. And if you want to think of it as a tradition because you want it to be a bit more ingrained, that's great. It can also just be like this year, this time, based on the weather, based on where you are, based on what's happening, what is something that you can do that will feel better than had you been going to the things that are causing you that kind of pain? Okay. What are some strategies to cope with pregnancy announcements at holiday gatherings? Okay, so we've got two last questions, I believe. And this is one of the second to last ones. So what are strategies to cope with pregnancy announcements at holiday gatherings? Okay, so going back to some of the things that I've said before in terms of intentionality, I would say, I would say that being intentional about who is going to be making announcements. So if you know that people have been together for 2 or 3 years, you know they want kids, you can expect in your head, maybe there's going to be an announcement. If somebody has a child who's 2 or 3 years old and you know that they wanted a few kids, again, you could be thinking, okay, there might be an announcement. So a big part of that is just pre-planning, sort of recognizing, okay, based on who is going to be there, I think it makes sense that they might make an announcement. If there are people that you feel close enough with and comfortable with enough, I think it can be really helpful to give people a heads up. Not always appropriate for everybody. But if it's somebody that you are close with who knows that you're struggling, then you might want to consider whether you want to send them a message to say, hey, just thinking about you and thinking about the holidays, and wanted to say that if this is a time where you're planning on making any big announcements, it would be really lovely if you could give me a heads up. I want to be able to be really happy for you when you have happy news. And that can be hard sometimes in a room full of people, right? Like you could sort of think about different ways to word it to see if you can get people to tell you beforehand so you know what to expect. And giving yourself that grace, right? If you are surprised by an announcement and you do have an emotional reaction, reminding yourself that you're a human being, you're doing the best that you can in an incredibly painful situation. And so feel, you know, feel like you can take that opportunity to step away from the table, to go into the bathroom and have a cry, to take the dog for a walk around the corner, to go in the kitchen and do some dishes, that you don't have to sit there while everybody is giving congratulations. If you need to step away, then you need to step away and catch your breath. And so being able to find ways in those moments or afterwards to take care of yourself and not staying too long in a scenario that's causing you pain. Um, Okay. There's actually two more questions, so I'll just answer both of them. One of them is, I feel like I'm in survival mode, just trying to get through the holidays. How can I get to a place where I'm actually enjoying it again? Yeah, yeah. I, I think that there's this sense when people are going through something really hard, that if you find the right thing, you'll be happy. And that would be, where people say, oh, but you used to love whatever. Whatever activity it is, right? You used to love playing the piano or used to love painting. So thinking about it like they're presenting it like if you do that, you'll feel better about this. But that's not how it works. There's nothing out there that is going to make you feel better about having a miscarriage or not getting pregnant. The idea is, are there things out there that you can do that will help you get through this difficult, difficult time? Are there things that you can do that will help you focus less on the pain and even for a few minutes on something else, right? So when our infertility, when our miscarriage is so huge, it's just like front of mind, it's center of mind, it's all we see, it's all we can think about. So sometimes if we do something else, the pain of that is still there. It's that instead of looking at it like this, we're looking at it like that. And so that question of like, how do you get to a place where you can enjoy the holidays? I would say trying to see if there are things that you like to do that can help distract you in the moment from the pain that's right in front of you. And enjoying may not mean the same thing, right? If you're still struggling with a loss, if you've had a recent IVF cycle that was not successful, enjoying something is not going to be as easy as it was when you weren't in so much pain. It's just a matter of, can you reduce the pain a little bit? Like I think of it as like a volume dial. Can you turn down the dial on the pain and turn up the dial on something else? So the pain is still there, but it's not front and center. And so when you think about enjoying something, it's within the context of that. And that allows you at the end of the day to realize, you know what, actually, yeah, like this day wasn't all bad, that there were things in the day that felt good, that I did enjoy. The foundation of pain was still there, but it wasn't front and center. And so I was able to get some respite throughout the day by doing different things. Okay. And I think our last question, my husband and I have been struggling with infertility for 5 years. We're 8 years apart and he has two children of his own that we have every other week. He wants us to have a time when we will stop. Yeah. This person saying they won't stop until they have their own child. How would you suggest positively communicating this with him? Yeah, so I mean, that is a huge subject. And I think that lots of couples struggle with that idea of when to stop. And lots of couples are on different pages with that. And that can be because one person already has biological children, or it could just be because one person feels like their life has been so consumed by this that they need to know that there's an endpoint, whereas the other person can't imagine an endpoint. And I would say that that is actually a perfect example of something that would be really good to bring into a counseling appointment, either on your own or together with your partner to talk about what does like being happy look like, because you said you won't be happy until you have a child together. So what does being happy look like? What does stopping look like? How far are each of you willing to go? What does that mean for your relationship? Those are huge questions. And reproductive counselors are really adept at working with couples to try and get to the bottom of that. Sometimes, as individuals, like what does that mean? What are you willing to sacrifice? Would you sacrifice your relationship? What does that mean? As well as working together as a couple to see how you can meet each other's needs. So I would definitely encourage you to bring that to a counseling appointment. Um, Okay, I think that that is all of the questions that you have. Um, any last questions that anybody wants to submit? I know we had a call out for last questions before we wrap up today. Okay. So thank you so much. I just wanted to give a reminder that after this is everybody who participated is going to be getting an email from Trio, and this recording was recorded. This session was recorded, and if you're interested, when you get that email from Trio, you can just reply and ask for a copy of this presentation, and they'll send you a link to that. And they'll be sending messages out to everybody who participated, so you can look in your inbox and expect to see that. Thank you all so much for being here today, for sharing those questions. My heart is definitely with all of you. I know well how difficult and painful this time of year can be. And I really encourage all of you to put your self-care first and prioritize what you need to get through this holiday season in a way that takes care of yourself, while also connecting you with the people around you that you love, which for a lot of people is really important this time of year. So I wish you peace towards the end of the year and better things for 2025. Thank you so much.